sir, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You're getting calls from everywhere talking about the new program we just discussed with Fannie Mae. Let's touch on it just a little bit, kind of with regard to what it opens up to, what it's leading to, and what it shows signs of in real estate altogether.
Well, I think, first of all, those of us in the business know that the credit box has been shrinking, right, for the last, 4 years or so. It's been tougher and tougher for our clients to qualify for a mortgage, and therefore tougher for them to purchase a home. This move by Fannie Mae would be really the first move that goes the other way, where the credit box is starting to widen. So I think that in itself is very symbolic. But I think it's especially symbolic or interesting that the areas that they're focusing on are very aligned with the Latino marketplace. So clearly Fannie Mae is recognizing that this is where the growth opportunity is. They've spent, I think, done their homework in terms of really analyzing and interviewing people and getting to understand those nuances. So when these new changes come into effect, it's going to be very interesting to see how many new buyers can be qualified with these new guidelines.
And the key word there, I think, is qualify, because at the end of the day, you still need to qualify when it comes to cash, credit, income. I think it's just overall the big picture. And I think that's where a lot of times we've been spoiled as an industry and saying, it's so difficult to get a loan. Well, in reality, I wouldn't say it's difficult. You simply have to qualify. You've got to provide supporting documentation. Now, the flexibility of the guidelines that come with qualifying, that's where an announcement like today from Fannie being a lot more flexible, where it seems like it can tailor more towards a Hispanic community and understanding how our culture works with regards to income and gifts and things like that.
Oh, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. So we certainly don't want to go back to where the industry was during the crash, right? Where we threw out every reasonable guideline and any litmus test to determine whether or not people can qualify or truly can repay these mortgages. So we're not going to go back to that. But we are starting to see that the guidelines are more reflective of where consumers are today.
Absolutely.
And this isn't so much just for the buyers that are just coming out and needing a reason to buy now. These are for the rebounds that maybe people that lost their home in that crash a couple years back and now having an opportunity to get back in the market too. So
it'll affect them as well. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
And I was going to say, I think a lot of it too is that same consumer that was banged up a little bit with the no doc, the stated type product, lost their home. In some cases also lost their business. At least at this point, if they better prepared themselves, they're in a lot better position financially. They're going to be a lot more educated. And of course, the business professional needs to be a lot more educated now too, to be able to kind of walk them through the process and help them understand why certain things are being requested and or looked into.
This last go around, I think that when you take that beating, the psychological part of it to get back into the market is a different thing. Being able to get back in the market because now you qualify again is different than now convince me why it's okay because last time me and my family just took a beating and lost everything that we had.
That's right. It's amazing though how resilient the Latino community has been in particular, right? Probably hit as hard or harder than any other demographic in terms of the foreclosure crisis. But I mean, that's why we're here. We're here for economic opportunity. The home is the center of our lifestyle, and we sort of dust ourselves off and get right back into the game.
Yeah, but the education part is definitely where you start. A lot of mortgages
will be better prepared to play the game this time.
And it's interesting because even something as simple that our loan officers do with our clients out there is something as simple as educating them on the debt to income ratio. Right. That was something that was constantly pushed. It's like, well, how high can you go? Well, this lender can go up to 50. This lender can go up to 55. And understanding there's a reason why that number, whether it be 38, 40, or 43, has been put into place, and helping clients understand that this is within your budget and this is why. I think once you get them to understand that kind of lays out the groundwork for the rest of the guidelines.
That's right. That's right.
Good stuff. I want to give you an opportunity now to talk about the long-term generational wealth that we've been talking about, Hispanic Wealth Project, and you characterize it in a bucket sense, or in 3 different buckets: home ownership, entrepreneurship, and savings and investments. So walk us through that and how they all kind of come together.
Well, about 2 years ago, a report came out by the Pew Center, and the report was shocking even to me, and it said that Hispanics had essentially lost 2/3 of their household wealth during the crisis between 2007 and 2012, and it wasn't high to start with. So losing 2/3 of your wealth as a community.
Was that because the majority of it was within the home, or is other factors?
Yeah, so that was probably the biggest reason. So if you look at the hardest hit markets in terms of the foreclosure crisis, California, Nevada, Arizona, Florida, big Hispanic populations, so a lot of them got wiped out. If they didn't lose their house, they lost all of their equity in their house. So that was huge. There were also huge unemployment during that period of time. There was no construction. A lot of us were in the construction industry and so forth. So it was kind of a perfect storm. So we looked at that number and we said, this is horrific. But also recognize that the number one source of household wealth for most families, not just Hispanic, but most families, is home equity, right? So we're an organization that's all about advancing sustainable home ownership. Secondly, the number two source of wealth for Latinos in particular is small businesses. So we're an organization that's all about advancing sustainable home ownership, and our members are predominantly small business professionals. So I talked to Henry Cisneros, and we both discussed that there's a role for NAHREP to play in terms of leadership in changing this, in turning back the dial and trying to rectify the situation in terms of household wealth. So we actually spent a year developing a blueprint, an actual business plan on how the Latino community can triple their household wealth over the next 10 years. And to your point, we are going to focus on three things. One is advancing the home ownership rate above 50%. So at least more than 50% of Hispanic will own their home in a 10-year span. Second thing is improving the first-year success rate for Hispanic small businesses. An interesting thing that we discovered was Hispanic small businesses tend to fail in the first year at a much higher rate than other segments of the population. But after the first year, they perform as well or better. So why is that, right? Yeah. And then the third bucket was all about diversification of assets. So the other thing that we discovered is that Hispanics, regardless of income band, regardless if you're somebody that's making $100,000, $200,000 a year, tend to participate in things like 401ks, retirement plans, and the stock market to a lesser percentage, right? So we weren't diversified. So when the storm came, it wiped out the equity we had in our home. We had nothing else. So we have a plan that really addresses all three of those issues and has initiatives within them that will advance the cause of home ownership, or I should say of wealth creation within the Latino community. And the one thing that I'm really excited about is the third one. The other two are equally as important, but I am really, really fascinated with the idea of helping Hispanic entrepreneurs in particular, people who are making a profit now, putting together a plan to create what I call long-term generational wealth, wealth that can be passed on to your heirs when we go, move on.
And we generally don't see that in the Hispanic community. I mean, it just seems like we're built to just work. I think that's where the kind of like the small businesses kind of come into play. That, the father passes away, God forbid, and then the business just dissolves. You see very few businesses where it's passed on to a sibling or the next of kin in this case. But we're not seeing enough of that. I personally don't see it.
That's right. That's right.
For the same reason.
So the concept of one of the things that we discovered is that just the concept of wealth itself is not something that Hispanics enjoy talking about. There's a sort of taboo. It's like the term itself sort of reflects something that maybe is selfish or show-offy or something to that effect. So we don't start off with a very good concept of what wealth is and what it means, right? So we have created a plan that we're going to deploy at the national conference this year, the NAHREP National Convention this year, that we call Below the Bottom Line Training, where we give our members very specific training on wealth creation. And it starts off with one thing, and that is changing your mindset, having what I call an evolved perspective when it comes to wealth and prosperity. And it's very, very different than what many of us grew up sort of thinking. When we think of wealth, we think of material things. We think of, spending money and going to nice places and whatnot. And, I'm not saying that that's not important, but it's not really what wealth brings you. Wealth brings you freedom. Wealth brings you a peace of mind. Wealth is entirely different. And until you really acquire an appreciation for that in a very real and deep sense, then you're not going to be able to get beyond where you are today. So we're going to focus on that first, and then we're going to put together some very specific game plans around how to structure a financial plan for long-term wealth creation.
Gary, going back to the first bucket, you mentioned home ownership. The goal for NAHREP is to get home ownership in the Hispanic community up to 50%, correct?
Right.
So right now we're sitting right around 44%
right now.
44%. How long would that take? Is this a 12 months? Is this 5 years out? Is this how long
So,
would you
so the goal is to accomplish these goals within 10 years.
Okay.
And so going from 44 to 50 may not sound like a big leap, but it really is.
Yeah.
And the reason why it is because the Hispanic community is growing so quickly. So right now about 44%. So there's 14 million households, Hispanic households in the country, and roughly 6.3 million of them own their own home, right? In the next 10 years, the number of households is expected to increase to 20 million, which means we're going to need at least 10 million owner households to be able to achieve that goal, which means we need 3.2. We're going to need to increase the number of owner households by almost 50%
You're playing
to hit that number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Playing some catch-up.
I think a lot of that has to do with, again, going back to square one, where we're talking about, taking the initiative and making sure that we're not only educating ourselves, but more importantly, being able to educate the consumer and help them build the confidence and understand, that it begins with home ownership.
And it's all about sustainability now.
Right.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's the word that I keep circling on this list is the sustainable part, because you can get a home. You can find a way to get a home.
That's
you
right.
can find a way to get your wealth or look like you're wealthy for a minute. But the sustainable part is the part that people have the most issue with, because it takes all those extra things. It's not just the flash.
That's right. That's right.
So great stuff, guys. When we get back from the break, we'll be talking more with Gary Acosta with long-term generational wealth, and also we'll be discussing the Hispanic Wealth Project goals and objectives. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Core Hour live on ESPN 1700. We'll be back.